There are a lot of different ways to go about controlling the styling and placement of fibers using fiber effects, and I thought we could take a look at using weight maps. So what I have here is a bust, a character bust, and I'm going to hop over to Modeler just so we can take a look. So here's the character, and I went ahead and created some weight maps. This is the base weight map, which is pretty much the entire surface except for the inside of the ears, the lips, nose, eyes, and eyeball, and also like beard, body, just this lower part down here, brow, and there's a few others. And I went ahead and pre-made those. We want to take a look at applying weight maps. So I'm going to head back over to layout, and let's add some hair to this guy and use weight maps to control it. So I'm going to go over to Control F8. Let's add fiber filter. Let's activate and draw. It's placing it everywhere, so I'm going to go to the surface, and I'm just going to go to the base surface. It's just the polys have a different surface attribute, so just toggle, and I can see that it's still too long, so I'm going to go, all I did was place it on the base. So I'm going to just go short. Let's try 25. We're going to further refine this with a weight map, but I can see that that's close enough. I'm going to pull that hair down. Let's do 300, so I'm using gravity to pull it down. It's going to conform to the geometry a little better. Instead of having the same scale everywhere, let's change this up a bit. So for scale, instead of 25%, I'm just going to go over to Texture Editor, and for layer type, I'm going to choose Gradient. For input parameter, I'm going to choose Weight Map, and for the weight map, I'm going to choose Base. That's that first weight map that we saw. Okay, so I don't have any negative values in my weight map. I could, but I don't, so I'm just going to set that to 0. And then for the 0 key, let's set the value to 0, so where it's 0% value for the weight map. And then for the end key, I'm going to set that to, well, we have it 25 out there. Let's just set it to 30 here. And if I wanted to, I could say in the areas that there's a 0 value, let's go ahead and just make that, let's do 14, okay, instead of 0. So what I'm basically telling it is, instead to have 0 scale in those areas, like around the eyes, and say like the lips inside of the ears, I'm just going to have it have a little bit of hair, but it's going to be short. But I also want to control density with that weight map, so I'm going to go over to my density here, and let's change that to gradient. I could have copied that over, but we'll set it up again just so we can take a look. Weight map, base, and let's do 0. And for one thing that I noticed about using gradients with the fiber tools is that if you actually want 0 for a value on a gradient, what really helps is to take the parameter and set it just above 0. It could even be 0.5. I'm just going to use 1. So instead of setting that key at 0, I'm setting it at 1. And here for density, let's use let's try a value of, let's see, density we had down here 40. Let's just do 40 for right now. And let's take a look at what's happening here. Okay, 40 is actually not enough. So I'm going to type in 100 and see what that looks like. Let's refresh. Yeah, that's a lot more hair, and that's going to work. I want to get rid of that kink, but not all of it. I'll use 5%, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. And let's go ahead and do a test render to see where we're at. Okay, so I've got a pretty nice looking short fur on this guy, but I want to take advantage of some of those other weight maps so that we can really dress this up. And I can see, you know what, we don't need to do another test render. It'll show up the next time we do a test render, but I'm actually going to throw some more hair on there to just fill in some of those areas. Now, we are rendering without the shadows, so we're going to, or actually we are rendering with shadows, so it gives us a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like. And let's take advantage of some of those other weight maps. Now, what I'm going to do is to take advantage of those, I'm going to clone this surface, but before I do, so that I don't have to set up these gradients again, I'm going to right click and save as default. Now what this does is it writes out a config file for the default settings of the hair. So every time I go to use Fiber Effects now, it's going to use these settings. So if you only want to use it for this time around, you'll want to go and delete that config file later. But for right now, I'm glad that I used it, because now when I clone the surface, the next surface already has everything set up based on these properties instead of the default. So what I'm going to do with this is, for the max fiber density, for this top one, I'm going to just increase that. Let's do 80. And now what we can see that OpenGL is not liking that many fibers, because I need to take my scene edge limit and just kind of turn that up a little bit. There we go. Now what I do whenever I'm working with a clone is I go ahead and drop the OpenGL on that clone so I can see what's going on there. So for the second one, I don't want as many fibers here. I'm going to try 20. And let's see, we used 80 there, so I'm going to try 20 here. And let's do for the density, I'm going to set, let's use the goatee. That'll show up pretty well. Okay. And for the surface, I'm going to change that to base, just like we did before. So we can see the goatee hair right there. For scale, I'm going to set the scale to, let's try 80. And let's refresh that. Let's see, that's a little bit longer, but I'm going to go even more than that, just so we can take a look. Let's do 200. And we'll refresh that. And there we go. So we get an idea of the long hair there. And if we turn on the other one, we can see the short hair and the long hair. So again, taking advantage of the weight map to, I just realized that my weight map on my base, I'm going to go ahead and change that to the goat as well, which is for goatee. Okay, and let's do a render, see where we're at. Okay, so we've got the long hair and we've got the short hair. Just taking advantage of those weight maps. We can also change the color and things like that. If we want to speed up render time, we can come over to shadows, and on those long hairs, we can just turn those off. Depending on how thick it gets, you might want to have a little bit if it gets really thick, but if they're short little hairs, this is a quick way to speed up rendering, although this is rendering fairly fast. Okay, so what we can do is continue to, let's clone this this surface, okay, this set of fibers, and let's say for the surface base, and let's turn this off, get rid of this render, and let's set the weight map for this one. Let's set it to beard, okay, and let's set there we go. It just took a second for OpenGL to update. And for scale, let's set this to beard, and let's set the scale, let's do 120. Okay, update OpenGL just to have a look. There we go, and let's do a render of that. Okay, so there we go. We've got some longer hair here, even longer hair here, and then short hair here. So I haven't gone in and changed like clump or stray or random length or anything like that. All I'm really wanting to show you is how we can use weight maps to go in and control this. Now we could build guides, or we could go and edit guides and layout and change the scale and and do some combing and things like that. But to me, this gives me the kind of control that I like to work with. I'm a big fan of weight maps for surfacing, so I'm just using the same kind of setups that I would use for surfacing to work with my fibers. Now we can also use these weight maps to control the color, to control any of these settings. We can limit a certain area. Say we had all the hair on the surface a certain length, and we didn't want different lengths, and we didn't want different density. All we would need to do if we wanted to say we wanted more clump in the beard or goatee, well, in the clump texture editor, we would take advantage of that weight map in, for that attribute. So don't just think of using a weight map for density or scale. You can use it all over the attributes, including coloring and going over to the shading tab. Anywhere you see a T for texture editor, you can go in and take advantage of that weight map. So this is just a brief introduction to using weight maps to get fine control over your fibers in Lightwave.